this is where people are. So we've got to meet them here and help lead them into something better.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the Church Circle podcast, and it is a morning time for me. It's not normally morning when I record these because I'm normally talking to people in different countries, and I have got another person with me today from the United States, and it's a little early for him as well right now. It's 5:45 a.m. for you right now, Jon?
Oh yeah, built for it.
Yeah, he is built for it, and maybe we'll find out a little bit more about why he's built for it as we get into this podcast. But I'm so excited as I've let on to introduce to you today, Jon Rush from what state are you in, Jon?
We're in North Carolina.
North Carolina, okay.
The Queen City is what they call it.
The Queen City. Well, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for being on here. I think people will know who you are. You're pretty much a legend in the church world, especially for student ministries, youth ministries, and in the gaming community as well. So thank you so much for joining. I know you've been up super early to be here as well, so I really appreciate your time. And for those that don't know you, maybe just share a little about who you are and your story.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Reuben and Church Circle, and everyone listening. I'm honored to be here. I love this sort of stuff so much. And I met Jesus when I was 16 at a small church in Celebration, Florida, which is right there near Orlando, and just had the most amazing experience for where I was in life. And at the time, I was also competing to be a professional Halo 3 and Call of Duty player, and a terrible student in school. But I got on fire for Jesus and started figuring out life. And back then, the content and gaming and stuff wasn't really as viable of a career path as it was now. Like, we had MySpace, YouTube was just really starting out. And I wasn't going to go to college because I just despised school. And I had a youth pastor that, suggested, what about ministry? And when I thought back, that was my junior and senior, so my last 2 years of high school. I look back and I go, wow, I really have just done, this is all I've done for the last 2 years other than gaming is also church. And I found that I was doing church even more so. And so found a huge passion for that. And then we moved to right outside Chicago, Rockford, Illinois. We were there for 10 years. That's where I met. I say we, but I didn't know my wife when I moved there. I met my wife there. We were part of the same ministry training program. I had a great time at an amazing church there called City First. Pastors Jeremy and Jen DeWert, and I was also fortunate enough to have been under one of my youth pastors. So my youth pastors that started the church in Orlando, that were part of starting the church in Orlando, were all from this town in Rockford. And so I got to, and they're actually a brother and sister, Megan and Garrett, and I got to actually be under them. And so I just look back and I go, man, if there's greatness in my life, I think it's because I've just had some of the same people pouring into my life for a long time. I would say more than creativity, more than innovation, I just believe in discipleship and leadership and relational equity, and how that is just the long-term fruit of anything. It's really, I think it's the best goods that we got as the church, is those long-term relationships. And was there for 10 years. And then for the last 5, my wife and I have been a part of Elevation Church here in Charlotte. We have 3 kids now, a 5-year-old, 2-year-old, both girls. And then our brand new, that's Selah Rose and Zaria Zeal. And then our brand new baby boy, his name is William Zion Skywalker Rush. And
nice.
We're loving life. Yeah.
There's some strong names, and congratulations, by the way, on the 3rd child.
Thank you.
And it's great to have you here. And like you said, I think you're a great guest to be on this podcast because you recognize the importance of connection. And I think at Church Circle, we're so wanting to build that connection with people, not just church creatives, but church staff, church volunteers, and church across the board, because it is really important. It's not just the connections we make in the church, but also connections we make across the globe. And we wouldn't be doing this podcast now if it wasn't for those connections. So thanks for being here. And I noticed you said you've been at Elevation Church for the last 5 years. You're doing a bit of a transition, right? You're kind of heading into a new season. So maybe just kind of explain where you're heading and what you're up to now.
Yeah, I think transition can be such a tricky part of ministry, and I don't think we talk about it enough. I don't think we talk about it enough because I think all of us desire the people that work for us or volunteer on our teams or just are our friends would stay wherever they are forever, but I think I've just learned that transition is a natural part of life and leadership, and the more we can embrace it while celebrating longevity at the same time. I don't think we have to choose. And so I think I've learned over the years of just, I guess maybe how to sense God moving, and then how to respond in a better way. And I think, here in Elevation, we just realized that there was a point where, man, at the end of the day, what God was doing in our lives and leading us to didn't match the vision of what was happening at the church. And that sounds like a really harsh, scary thing, because then you start to think, oh, was there like a difference in beliefs or a difference in it? Wasn't that. It's that I'm just a firm believer that every organization and every church, they do not exist to give everyone their dream job. I think that churches, people exist to serve churches and organizations, and that in seasons and in right opportunities, there can be a very synced up nature of the flow of the God call on the person, the flow of the God call on the organization. And really what we just did is just journeying with our leadership. We just kind of had a mutual conversation over a long time, I'd say, with our amazing leadership there, of just going like, man, I think God's doing something new in the Rush family. And a lot of that right now in this season is focused on content, gaming, innovation. I've been on the front lines. I guess I would say I still feel like I'm on the front lines to a degree, but I also know that it's different. In local church ministry. And I feel like now at 32, 15 years in, God's positioning our family to be more, I say I'm going from like the Army to the Air Force, of just like helping multiple churches. Instead of serving one church, we want to help multiple churches, as well as God's just kind of calling us into just some crazy opportunities in some of just the culture at large, the entrepreneur space, the influencer space, and kind of just seeing ministry in a new way. And we'll be moving to Nashville, Franklin, Tennessee area in March too, and excited about it all.
Very exciting. Yeah, I'm really excited for this move for your family. I think it's going to be just the reach you guys are going to be able to have, and the influence is going to be really exciting. So, yeah, I mean, this is kind of the conversation I want to get into, because we know you from Elevation, and we know you kind of in the Youth Nation kind of thing, but you're stepping into some new stuff, particularly around gaming, and kind of going beyond that. And this is an important conversation for the church right now, because it's one of those we can shy away or we can step into conversations. And there's lots of areas of ministry right now that people are kind of on the fence about. What do we put our time and resources into? How do we feel about this? Is this too secular? Those kind of conversations. And I think as we step into this new season of church, of how we, post COVID, how do we engage people online but in person as well? I think gaming and online community and young people is a really big part of this conversation. So glad you're here to talk about it. I wanted to kind of just dive straight in. I think a lot of our audience won't have much familiarity with gaming. Maybe they'll be of an age group that haven't really grown up with that around them. So kind of what are some common misconceptions that churches have right now about like incorporating gaming into a ministry? Like, is gaming something that is a bad thing, or is it something that actually we can use as a tool to really reach people?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's a lot of misconceptions. Certainly when I was growing up and over the years, there's this idea of nerd culture, and that gamers were antisocial, and it was kind of this like segment of society. And now a 2023 study showed that 65% of Americans are gaming. And that's higher with all, like 75% of Gen Z, for example, are gaming on a weekly basis. It is a massive industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. There's a couple studies that show, obviously, some of these things depend on how you on what you measure, but there's certainly some compelling evidence that shows that the gaming industry as a whole is bigger than all the major sports combined, and so huge money to be made, and that's because there's a huge audience for it. And so I would say different now is that gaming really isn't a thing that nerds do. It's something that everyone does. Majority of professional sports players, play video games of some ilk, and Certainly Gen Z, LeBron James Jr., which is funny. He's not turning out to be a great basketball player, but in terms of an icon, of Gen Z, he's still very much so influential and all that. And he's got time. We'll see what happens. He made money playing Fortnite before he ever made money playing basketball. And so, I mean, there's so much I could say about that. Before Sports Illustrated shut down, they had a whole gaming, cover and all of this, and it's massive. And colleges are recruiting people for their esports programs as a gateway into STEM technology. Recently in the world, a lot of the large influential families and individuals in Dubai in the Middle East have bought hundreds of millions worth of teams and players and contracts and built stadiums and stuff to really become the capital of gaming, which is very, very interesting. And so yeah, I think there's so much you could say about it. I always just laugh because I never really view myself as like a gaming guy. I just view myself as Jon, and I never view myself as, well, so you use gaming to reach people. I use everything to reach people.
Sure.
I use everything that God has given me to reach people. Every bit of, from loving fashion to, loving to read to, loving comedians, and so to me, there's a lot of ways we could take this, Reuben, but I would just say high level understanding gaming is a part of all culture. And then secondly, like, to me, it's not as taboo as any other topic of just saying like, hey, are we going to reach people with this medium and that like this? I would say different than somebody who likes Taylor Swift. Gaming provides a lot of avenues that church leaders and certainly businesses and content creators can utilize, right? Like,
yeah,
there's only so much you can do with the Taylor Swift album, right? Oh, we have a fan club for Taylor Swift. Gaming, you can create communities and you can create, you can actually literally play together. Say, I've said a few times, I've never been quoted. It's a really good quote. Maybe this will be the one that does it, but I've said multiple times that video games are the truest form of social media that's social, like that. Mm-hmm. Even Instagram, you post something and we're oftentimes responding in a delayed way. Gaming is media that's social. It's happening in real time. You're actually creating new experiences and new relationships in real time in a social setting. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. You said that like 70% of Gen Z are gaming every week. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if those are very similar statistics for how often Gen Z and millennials are on Instagram. And the church has no problem with being on Instagram. The church has no problem with being on Facebook. Maybe in 2012, when it kind of all kicked off, the church was apprehensive. But I think what you're saying is like, this is just a ministry tool, just as much as a social network is a ministry tool. Yeah. These are all things that we can use. And this feels like the gaming world was like a massively untapped, I don't want to say market, but a massively untapped audience and a group of people to reach, just because we've kind of been on the fence about, okay, is it actually worth our time? Is this, I almost feel like youth pastors are trying, having to justify them playing online. Like, when they report back to their pastor what they've been doing this week, like for them to say I've been gaming is not understood as something that was worth their time. And so I think there is this conversation. I think there's this shift that's happening, and it's why it's important for people like you to kind of come here and say, well, actually, no, this is something that's good. Is there any kind of success stories that you can share personally that like, or just ways you've reached people, or some like a story that's happened just from gaming? Discover a community that truly understands your passion for ministry and the challenges that come with it. Welcome to Church Circle. More than just another Facebook group, Church Circle is a vibrant network of church leaders, staff members, and creatives who are committed to learning, growing, and supporting one another. With weekly live meetups featuring engaging conversations on the most important topics facing the church today, you'll never feel alone in your ministry journey again. Say goodbye to juggling multiple inactive groups and hello to the one-stop shop for all your ministry needs. Join the movement and experience the power of community at churchcircle.com today.
Yeah, well, and something I'm really passionate about, Reuben, and can nerd out here is I don't believe in using anecdotes to justify something, and let me just say something controversial here. You said I could, I think that a lot of the success around Instagram and Facebook ads is a lot of anecdote. I think the enemy to innovation is using anecdote improperly, meaning, this one person, because anecdote can just be written off sometimes to the goodness of God and the Holy Spirit. And it doesn't always mean that people should be building church models around it. And so
Sure.
I think as church leaders, as leaders in general, business, creative, it's our job to be discerning on what is for us and what is for someone else. And I would say that when it comes to all innovation, because I know church leaders feel a lot of pressure to it. You got LED screens and graphics and social media. There's so many things to be good at. And I think the last 30 years of the church, guys like you and me and a lot of other people, and we're just like railing on these pastors, and just like, you just don't care. You just don't care. Be bold. Paul was an innovator, blah, blah, blah. But now, I'm getting a little bit older and I have kids now, and I go, man, you know what? Like, I actually hope there's a ton of pastors that don't ever touch video games or social media. You know why? Because they're not gifted for it.
Sure.
You know what we need more than innovators? We need shepherds. Mm-hmm. We need pastors to just love and walk with people. I would say that I would even say that that's the greatest. We're missing that more than we're missing innovation right now in the church. And so I would say that with gaming and with all things, pastors need to lean into either two approaches. Either one, God really has put on you that there is something in you, on you, or in and on someone directly related to your staff that you're like, man, we need to start this musical project. We need to start this creative project. We need to lean into YouTube. We need to lean into gaming. Because if there's a gift and a grace for it, the results will flow from anything. There's amazing examples of churches, from prison ministry to sports ministry. There's seasons of this great church in Colorado called Red Rocks that they still might have it. A sports ministry, like a full on, they hired people to do sports ministry. I know in Arizona, there's a church called Christ Church of the Valley that they have like whole football fields and soccer fields and everything. They're leaning into them, right?
Sure.
And what would be a waste of time for one church is a part of the grace and the gift for another church. So either you find that it's a part of you guys as a functional church. But I would say the second thing is if it's not you, it probably is someone that you're supposed to be pastoring.
Sure.
So I just think I don't think every church needs to have an Instagram. I don't think every church needs to have a YouTube. I don't think every church needs to have Twitch or play video games. I just think if they don't have it, they should be discipling, championing, and resourcing somebody in their church that does. There's a great case study for this. One of my good friends, Grant Diamond, he streams under the name Preacher Guy. He's one of the only pastors that is like streaming every day in these video game spaces. And because his name is Preacher Guy, people see that and they come into his chat and you think, oh, we live in such a fallen world. People are hating on him. He gets that. But most people see preacher and they think pastor, and they come to him for prayer and they come to him for help, and they see him playing a video game and see him hitting headshots in Apex Legends while stopping to say, oh man, I'm going to pray for, the situation you're going through. It's amazing. When he transitioned from his, he was a campus pastor at his church in Dallas. His church, instead of just like sending him on, they realized, wow, we can send him out as a digital missionary. So, he's been supported these last few years by his church as a digital missionary. And so I just think we can get into all the weeds of the practicum, because I know some people are listening to this for that, but I just also want to speak to the pastor that feels like, your church has to have everything. No, your church doesn't have, your church should be what you feel like God has gifted and graced you and your church to be. And that means it can be very, quote, traditional in the sense of what the church is. And maybe your innovative expression is leading, people who are in it, be a great pastor to YouTubers, be a great pastor to gamers, raise them up. And so I know I didn't fully answer your question on success, and I'm happy to do that.
No, it's
maybe
good.
We can come back to that and ping off this.
No, I think what I'm hearing you saying is like, it's about holding things in your hand loosely and seeing what God does with them, right? Like when it comes to like the word organic kept coming up in my head as you were talking, like as we are trying to identify these things or these ministries to serve in, it should be something that feels organic and not something that feels forced. And I think this is true of Instagram. This is true of content creation. Anytime the content creation feels forced, it feels like the person doesn't have a passion. It's not succeed. It's not successful. There's no people don't have a reason to watch it. Like, I don't watch people on YouTube. I don't watch people who game because they are wanting to make money out of it. I watch it because they enjoy what they do, and I get enjoyment out of watching that. And so I think it's that thing of when you're saying about identifying someone in the church, it's like, okay, is this person already have a passion for it? Is it something they feel like God is calling them to, and kind of holding that loosely and letting God take that where that needs to go. And like you said, being a shepherd and helping and facilitating how you can, but without it becoming maybe a ministry program or something directly that's associated with the church.
Yeah, well, because the problem with that, and this is just how, I don't know who taught us how to think this. I don't know if it's all these old church guys, like if this is a Bill Hybels thing, but somewhere along the way, we just think like when we start something for the church, we think, how do we put the church's logo on it? But I think we need to shift our mentality to say, how can we champion someone who's already in the church? So an example would be just like you said it, but a lot of churches go, oh, we need social media. Okay, but you made some church account. It's not effective. It's not hitting the algorithm. It's not, reaching new people in your city. Your even current people don't watch it. And I'm describing a lot of how a lot of people feel about their social media. I would say, what if instead you found that man or that woman who is a CrossFit fitness influencer locally in your city that you see as a gift and a knack for building communities online and even locally? And what if you just supported them? What if you bought them a camera? What if you paid them and then you partnered with them to say they're doing what you really want to do, which is reach people online and maybe gather on it? I just think there's if we check our ego, if we really ask the question, how do we measure the effectiveness of our energies online? I think a lot of churches would feel maybe a little bit more stressed, but then they'd feel more free, because whenever we address the truth, the Bible says that you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. So do you know the truth of your online footprint as a church and as a ministry? And do you know if it's actually producing? Because I've known of people that have started campuses, Reuben, based off of Facebook impressions, which Facebook impressions measure 0.02% of someone seconds of someone seeing it. They're not even seeing your thing. You're like, oh, we have 10,000 people watching. No, you had 10,000 people scroll by because you paid $1,000 on an ad, and that's what Meta is designed to do for you, right? I just say all that to say, we can anecdote anything to sound like a success story, Reuben. But when we're talking about what are models and structures we should build around, like I can tell you about how a church could very, very easily use a Fortnite tournament to reach a large amount of people in their zip code by taking a digital idea and implementing it in a local community context, by putting up posters to sign up for it, to doing a lot of people think, Reuben, that this is only good at reaching people across the world, but it's also a great way to reach people across the street. Why? Because everyone that you're trying to reach in your zip code has one of these. So if you can win here, it's about winning in the right space and winning with people. Most churches want to grow locally, and so most church leaders don't know how to win on social media, in digital communities, in a way that gets people from here to their church. And I think gaming actually can be one of the things that does that.
I think there's a lot to be said about the funnel as well, because I think a lot of church pastors, and I'm not trying to come down on them, but a lot of church pastors, the end goal of the funnel is not for them to meet Jesus necessarily; it's to get them into the church, right? And I think that's when we talk about the there's a specific word, I get the stratification. Oh, I can't remember how to say it. It's just one of those words I really struggle with.
I like it.
When you think about how it spreads out, right? When the church as a model is very specific, or kind of the modern church is very specific about, okay, we got to get people from here to here. And when you start to empower other people to run their own ministries and do their own things, I think this is where this church logo thing comes from, is it starts to spread out and you lose control, and the end goal of the funnel becomes different. The good thing about it is that we can always point people to Jesus regardless of where we are, and that can be the end goal. But it very rarely, when you start to spread it out this much, does it become, let's get people to the church that I'm part of. And I think this is maybe where this control things come from, is like the church pastors are maybe out of fear, or maybe it's just out of tradition. Like they think that getting them into the church and get them on the seat is going to be the life transformation. And there is a huge part of that being in community. But there are also these avenues that we can pursue, like specifically on digital, where it's like, okay, well, this person we're having great conversations with, I get to pray for them, I get to introduce them to the gospel right here live, and then I get to send them to a church that's local to them. And that doesn't necessarily fit the end goal of most modern churches today, or let me not say most, but a significant chunk of modern churches today.
Yeah, so, and I wouldn't say that people disagree with the outcome. I just honestly think, they don't know how, and I think there just needs. I think to me, this idea of owning where maybe you're confused or you don't know, I think is the greatest fear for a lot of leaders. But I think that something that Gen Z leaders do really well is lead with authenticity. And I think the leaders of the future will humbly say, man, I don't know how to do this. Will you guys help me? Or man, maybe we're not good at this. And that might mean that you shift strategy. Or it might mean that you completely abandon a strategy and realize, hey, we are a local church that does these three things well. And instead of having social media, we're going to influence social media influencers. And I just think the control part, obviously people are fickle, right? And there's no way to guarantee it. But my thought to people is all these other influencers that you could be supporting in your church. One, I think that's what we're supposed to do anyway, equip the saints to do ministry. But two, I just think, imagine for pastors, let's just make a mental model. What if you discipled 3 people who each had 1 million subscribers on YouTube? But your church never had never even had 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Would your church still be impactful on YouTube? I think more so. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of churches are striving to get to 10K subscribers on YouTube instead of maybe discipling the people in their church and unleashing them and empowering them to be all that they can be. And so I just think it's just such a good reminder for me. I've learned as a pastor, Reuben, I'm not the hero of the story. Jesus is the hero of the story, and the people of my church are the hero of the story. And I think that when we lead that way as a shepherd, that's when we're going to see the most ministry fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, we've only got a couple more minutes here, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but,
all good.
But yeah, so it's a great point. And I think understanding the metrics of things, like you said, when you look at the meta metrics of Facebook reach and stuff, it really dilutes specifically what our mission is. It makes us think about, okay, people as a number and not as a person to be pastored and shepherded. And like you said, 3 people with a reach of 1 million or 1 million subscribers is going to do way more than trying to inflate the numbers of your own ministry. And that's not to say it's an ego thing for many pastors. I think it's just a lack of understanding of how to dissect the metrics and understand what they actually mean in terms of impact. I want to just, while we've got these last few minutes here, just balance the conversation here with, obviously there are a lot of churches do a youth ministry. It's in person. Yeah. How can you balance those two things, the face-to-face, the digital? How do you make those things work together so well? I know there's a lot of youth ministries that do both under their own brand. So we're not kind of specifically talking about people going off and doing their own ministry, but kind of let's say a youth ministry locally is doing both things, online and in person. How do they balance those things well?
Yeah, no. And I said all that at the beginning just because I care so much about technology being implemented well into the church. And I think that there are many people who believe in technology almost so much that they're only willing to say, I never want to talk about technology or gaming like it's the magic pill, because it's not, and I want to free pastors up to be who they are. But like you said, there is a very real reality where, there's so much on the table for churches to utilize when it comes to digital and in person. And I would say, to answer your question, when they're at church, let them be at church. That's my opinion. Don't do video games at church. Don't do screen stuff at church. It's like some of the only 2 hours a week where they're at church. You finally got them to church. And then I hear a lot of pastors like, well, how do I, get gaming there or do a big social media thing there? No. Let Sunday and Wednesday be for being like this, but let the other days of the week be where you get them here. Show up with them here. Some ideas would be, a Discord community. It's it's an ultimate group chat, not just for gamers, but for everyone, creating a spot where throughout the week, your leaders can chat with your students and you can answer Bible questions and you can talk about what's coming up next, even utilizing Instagram as a part of your announcements. So whenever you're giving your announcements, tell everyone that they need to go react and comment on the latest post. Like train your people to react on your church's social media and incentivize them, because the reality is that yes, on one sense, your content needs to be good enough that you'd want them to come. But on the other hand, some of the things we're posting on our church social medias are such that we're never going to compete with the entertainment industry. So instead, what we need to do is appeal to the discipleship of saying, hey guys, if you're a part of such and such youth group, make sure to drop a heart emoji on our latest announcement carousel. Because if you do that, you'll know everything that's coming up in the next 3 weeks. You'll enter to win a giveaway. And we'll know you really about what we're doing here. And everyone that drops a heart emoji will enter in to win this giveaway. Train your people to be engaged on your social media. Teach your students to be digital missionaries within the church platform and your platform. Raise up, digital Bible studies. There's these ideas like, some of the stuff we did during the pandemic, Reuben, is stuff we never should have stopped doing. Mm-hmm. And it's stuff we should have been doing before the pandemic. Yep. We stopped doing it. The biggest loser energy I heard coming out of the pandemic and even during is our students are just screened out. No, they're not. They spend more screen time than any generation ever. You're screened out. We're screened out as the adults, as the leaders. We got tired. We ran out of ideas. We were exhausted. But then we've written off Zoom. You know what the capabilities of something like Zoom could do, Reuben, is you could have students praying in every single school that's represented, or for adults in multiple workplaces, and you could start your day every day, or once a week, or once a month, whatever the cadence would be, as a youth pastor with a Zoom panel that shows you 10 students praying in the 10 schools you're trying to reach, or 100 students praying in the 2 schools you're trying to reach. And there's just such an opportunity of technology to connect people that I feel like we're leaving on the table. But I think we also sometimes think, Reuben, for technology to do the work for us, like, oh, I posted a link, everyone should care. No, you still need to lead people to the link. You still need to make the link good. Like, you still need to, in the same way there's really lame prayer meetings or really lame huddles at church, there's lame digital, IG lives. I won't name who, but there's a very tech adjacent church company that was that started, they're trying to get people excited about their product, and they did like this Instagram live thing. It was boring. I tuned into it for 5 seconds, and I'm like, I'm bored. Nobody online, nobody has to care. When they're in your room, they have to follow our rules. So I think it's so much, like we just did a Fortnite tournament with over 100 churches where we were capturing whether a student was involved in a church or not and what zip code they are in, so that we can use Fortnite as an onboarding atmosphere for kids who a low entry point. You play from your home, so it's also low setup for the church. We're doing a lot of these. We're building some of these things that we're talking about too. I'm building for churches, so that they don't have to build it for themselves. But amazing. I mean, there's so many opportunities. I think again, the biggest anchoring point I would say to you is, how can you create measurables around digital methods that will grow your in-person ministry? Yeah. And stem from there. And how has God graced you and gifted you? And how has God graced the people on your team and gifted them? And work from there. And there, you'll just be amazed, I think, at all the different opportunities to either do discipleship or evangelism in digital methods.
I love what you said about we're not competing with the entertainment industry. I think this was the huge wake-up call during COVID, was that the church is not about entertainment, it's about eternity, right? Like we are here to disciple people and bring them closer to Jesus, with the end goal of them receiving salvation. And everything that we do in the church has got to facilitate that, not an entertainment thing, not just getting kids away from their house for 2 hours a week because the parents want to get rid of them. And what all of the things we're talking about today, and in fact, all the things we've spoken about on this podcast in this season and the last season, it always seems to revolve around this. It's about discipleship. It's not about entertainment. in creative, in pastoral, in online, in giving. It's all about us doing something that's going to discipline us and disciple us and make us better people, make us closer to Jesus, and bring people on the journey with us as well. And hopefully, to the listener who's listening right now, they're feeling equipped and empowered to go, okay, well, maybe I can now use gaming not as a tool for entertainment, not as something to fill the schedule on a Friday night for our youth ministry, but it's something that actually can impact and equip people where they are in their homes, across counties, across towns, across nations, and actually bring them close to Jesus through the power of online community. So, Jon, do you have any kind of final thoughts? You just gave a load of advice and loads of word of wisdom, but anything that kind of send people off before we wrap up?
Yeah, it's where people are. And so our job as church leaders is to, yes, bring them to where we want them to be. But Jesus showed us that our job as Christians is to also go to where people are. And Jesus modeled such a great example of both, right? And the church, is such an example of going to the darkness, but then having our own set apart spots of life. And so when I see this, or when I think of a controller, I just think this is where people are. We've got to show up there. We've got to be there. And that might not mean that we're preaching, but it means that we're building relationships to build equity, to have a witness, to help show people something over here, And so I just think that I view digital space and gaming as I see it like on a map. If there was a town and there was a part of town, like a big part of town, and there's a lot going on there, because there's a lot of reasons to not do digital. It's expensive, it's stressful. A lot of church leaders like, I just don't go on social media for my mental health. Okay, fine. Yeah. The way I see it, Reuben, is there's people dying there.
Sure.
So I'm not okay with circling an area of a neighborhood, a section of a city, and saying, we just don't go there. Jesus will never work there. We're just going to give it up to the enemy. And I don't think any church leader would do that. But sometimes I feel that when we look at social media, Christians just think if we put our heads down enough and hide our kids from it, that one day we're going to wake up and it's all going to be better. And the answer is no. We must bring light to the darkness, and we must raise up better influencers, disciples. What if Mr. Beast had found the right youth group? What if, Aiden Ross, met Jesus now? We've got to not just play defense and hope. Because again, I got kids. I'm all about, I'm not saying that we need to send our kids in there, right? Like I'm not saying give your kids, I'm all about waiting until as long as possible to give kids phones and social medias. What I'm also saying, though, is people are there now, whether we like it or not, and the people that need Jesus. So what are we doing as the church to show up there in gaming, in streaming, in social media? And I just don't think hiding is an option, because it's not going anywhere. And I think it's going, how can we be a part of showing up and making a difference, whether that's starting your own channels, whether that's supporting a creator like myself or some of my friends, raising up one of your students, in-house to say, wow, this kid really loves streaming Fortnite. Like as a church, we're just going to invest hundreds of dollars and time into making him awesome. And the ROI might not be money for the church or tithe, but one day there will be an ROI that both matters here on earth and in heaven. So I just think it's going, we know it's a problem, but what are we doing about it?
Sure.
Other than posting about our social media breaks, which is always the funniest thing, I think a pastor in 2024 that doesn't know anything about social media is akin to a pastor who says, yeah, I just don't walk around my city. My city has sin in it. My city is stressful. My city has crime. My city has people who are experiencing homelessness. It's like, yeah, that's why we're here, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now I'm not saying that we shouldn't be responsible in the way that we consume social media, but my challenge to us as church leaders is saying, this is where people are. So we've got to meet them here and help lead them into something better.
Man, what a great way to end. What a call to action that is. I feel inspired and equipped as well. So I really appreciate your time, Jon. Thank you so much for getting up so early to be part of this as well.
Easy.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely gonna have to try and tune into more of what you're doing. And why don't you just let the people know how they can connect with you, how they can tune into what you guys are doing, and kind of how they can find out more.
Yeah, well, it's early days, so it's a good time for anyone. I mostly make my content on Instagram, Jon W. Rush, Jon W. Rush. You can follow me on there. But expanding into other platforms, and as well as I'm building a lot of structures that hopefully that churches can take advantage of, Fortnite tournaments, gaming apparatus. I'm doing a lot of great things, streaming. Just next week I'm being flown in by Epic Games to help run their World Championship. Which is huge. I'll be at TwitchCon, which is like the biggest streaming convention in September. And so just a really good mix of being out there in the culture and then also trying and so influencing there. So there's a lot of prayer support that people could do there. But then also trying to build structures and systems so that everything I'm talking about when it comes to streaming, when it comes to Discord, when it comes to gaming, when it even comes to social media, building online communities, churches can activate on it. And so in addition to, traveling and preaching, I get to now also travel to churches and help them with their creative, help them with social media, help them build gaming structures. And so we've even started seeing gaming done as a creative opener for church. So it's like what we can do for you is like, hey, instead of having silent disco, you want a Fortnite tournament? Hey, instead of having a dance, do you want something gaming related? And there's plenty of examples of that on my Instagram. So early days. So if you're wanting to get on the ground floor of kind of moving forward in this, securing digital real estate for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and really reclaiming the video game culture and social media culture for Jesus, just hit me up. Let's do it.
There you go. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for joining. I hope the listener, whoever's listening right now, has enjoyed this. Give us a rating, share it with someone that you know who's in this situation right now, who wants to kind of branch out into that side of the mission field. And we'll see you guys on another episode of Church Circle. Thank you again, Jon, for joining, and we'll see you guys soon.